country in particular. For more, I'm joined by Josh Kennedy-White from cybersecurity consultancy Division X. Josh, it's good to see you. We know from what the Prime Minister said that both private and public organizations were affected by this attack. What's the scale of it?
Well, I think that a lot of the details are still emerging and we'll find out more over the coming days. But a couple of points to make is that it's a broad campaign and it's targeted at definitely banks and government organisations, so it's fairly wide in scope, and it has a range of different tools, techniques and practices in terms of what the attackers are after, credential theft, moving laterally within organisations. It seems to be, as they've said, sophisticated. It seems to be well synchronised, and that brings down the number of players who could really execute such an attack.
Yeah, on that point, in the press conference where this announcement was made, the Prime Minister was asked specifically, is it China? Given the trade tensions that we've seen between the two sides, right, recently, he declined to comment. But which countries are actually capable of pulling off something like this?
Yeah, so when it comes down to answering that question, it's really a question of who has the capacity and who has the intent, right? So there's very few countries that have the capacity to carry out these. So if we think excluding allies, they would be really Russia, China, Iran and North Korea. And then within those, Iran and North Korea tend to carry out slightly different attacks because they're sanctioned countries, their motivations typically are more financial. So that it really brings down to intent. There's always simmering issues between China and Russia, as you've said. So really, I think it comes down to probably those are the key actors that they would be referring to. But prime ministers and leaders around the world are very reluctant to point to attribute these attacks. One, because it's difficult, but I think it's important to remember that from their perspective, it's a bit like you're living on a desert island and there's only one neighbour and you wake up one morning and your car's been trashed. Well, you can't prove your neighbour did it, but there's not really many other people out there who have that capability.
Yeah, Josh, it certainly does make you think, doesn't it? But, really briefly, what's the next step here? What do we expect Australia to do in a situation like this?
Well, one thing they won't be doing is striking back. I think the important thing to realise is that the difference between certainly the way the Australian government operates is it works out who are legitimate targets, and they have publicly acknowledged that they do engage in this sort of activity against legitimate actors. In their minds, legitimate actors would not be businesses, for example. This is an area, it's a murky business. There's a lot of things that are ongoing all the time. I think that the government's primary objective is to get the message out to organisations, not just government ones, but to businesses to be robust. This is pretty much the new normal. In the olden days, the way states would exert this sort of power is sending a delegation of warships to surround your country and to really exert pressure. This is a way of really, it's a bit like popping up the equivalent of a periscope on a submarine to say, if you do some things, there will be consequences, and we will periodically display our ability to be able to have that effect on you. And that becomes part of a coordinated diplomatic mission to achieve an objective for that state.